Welcome to this installment of Business Battleground. It's December 2019, and as I look to plan for the 2020s, I can't help but go back in time and ask myself, where was WatchMojo a decade ago? Picture this. It's December 2009. WatchMojo's YouTube channel, which at the time basically was just one channel, unlike today where we have 30, 40 channels across a number of verticals and international editions. But a decade ago, we generated $2,500 off of 2 million views. If you fast forward a decade, we now have the channel alone 21 million subscribers. We generate overall about a couple hundred million of views per month on YouTube. And we generate, a nice sum of revenue, relatively speaking, to that era, which we then reinvest in these other channels. I want to break down where YouTube was vis-a-vis the online video landscape then, where we are today, and ask some questions to help you guys and myself figure out where we might be in a decade. So, in 2009, YouTube had basically already left the early online video pioneers such as Gooba and Rever in the dust. I think by then both were pretty much out of business. In fact, in 2007, even though we had no money, we looked at buying Rever. Why? It's a story for another day. They had also edged out Dailymotion and MetaCafe that were still kind of in the game, but Google had owned YouTube now for a couple of years, and it was clear that YouTube was just going to be the lead player, and in fact, possibly the only player in this advertising video on demand or AVOD space. The portals, AOL, MSN, and Yahoo, which had kind of dominated the internet landscape for about over a decade, well, they were succumbed by innovator's dilemma. They had built these businesses that made a lot of sense, but they didn't really adapt to the rise of video, the rise of mobile, and especially the rise of social. So they were kind of left out in the dust, and YouTube, which was the #2 search engine in the world and the leading video platform in the world, had been acquired by Google, which was the #1 search engine in the game, but also the top internet company by then. So if the feds had any idea that they were letting the #1 search engine buy the #2 search engine, which was also the #1 video platform, let's just say that there's a chance that they might have wanted to stop that from happening. In any case, the ensuing decade saw YouTube become this massively successful platform that effectively became a monopoly in video, almost even more so than search had seen with Google. I would say that in 2014, you saw the first game changer, or the latest game changer, which was Google Preferred launching, which gave advertisers finally the opportunity to advertise along the cream of the crop on YouTube, which, disclaimer, WatchMojo was included in. It was basically the largest 1% of channels where the content was, at least relatively speaking then, safe, or safer than everything else that was out there on YouTube. I would say another game changer was also Content ID. Now, as much as Content ID gives me ulcers, and we've covered Content ID quite a bit, there's some links below, it was part of the solution to make YouTube a more palatable and rights holder friendly environment. And I've always said that despite my frustrations in certain aspects of how it's implemented, it's actually more of a solution than a problem, and I can't believe I said that, but that's probably the truth. In parallel, in another lane, you had Netflix. Now Netflix, I remember Jeff Bewkes, who was the CEO and chairman of Time Warner, jokingly referred to Netflix as the Albanian army, yet by the end of the decade, Time Warner had flew the white flag saying, no mas, we can't stay independent, we're going to sell to AT&T. Netflix's success in the subscription video on demand or SVOD market changed the entire landscape amongst traditional media companies. So if you fast forward to 2019, you have YouTube emerge as the leading player in AVOD, and Netflix emerge as the leading player in SVOD, and we have actually one of the first business battleground videos we did was Netflix versus YouTube, the battle for the future of media. Check it out. So where are we today? So today, YouTube is without a doubt the lead player. We're a good proxy for web video. We generate probably 90% of our reach on YouTube. There are some players who get most of their reach on Facebook, and we'll talk about Facebook in a bit. But Facebook is not really an organic platform the way YouTube is. Facebook historically is more of a pay-to-play platform where you have to ultimately buy traffic to establish reach. There are exceptions to that rule, but by and large, I think most people will admit that organic reach is dead on Facebook. Now, Facebook, the caveat is it's a massive platform. YouTube has 2 billion users, Facebook has 2 billion users, but Facebook is more about social media, social networking. It's more of a communications platform, whereas YouTube is an information and entertainment platform. Video is only about 5% of Facebook's business, so when Mark Zuckerberg is sitting there eating young children and wondering how to conquer the next decade, he's thinking of many ways to do that, and video is one of the many ways. Now, Facebook Watch was the latest way that Facebook wanted to tackle the market, and while it didn't necessarily become what it sought out to do, I would say that Facebook is pretty committed to Watch and will probably stay the course. And in fact, their acquisition of Instagram, which was initially more of a mobile image photo play, has evolved into this wild card of video in its arsenal that I think is going to give Facebook, between Watch, the feed, and Instagram video, an interesting path to try to build market share. How much remains to be seen. A couple years ago, when we celebrated our 10-year anniversary, I kind of plotted WatchMojo WM 2020, which was basically where I thought we would be today. Some of the things we guessed right, some of the things we executed properly, and trust me, there's a lot of things we didn't nail. We did think that today Facebook would be a much bigger piece of our business as our number 2 platform. Wrong and wrong. Snap, disclaimer, I own some shares, and I believe this is a Snap sweater, which I just realized a few minutes ago. Snap has actually emerged as our number 2 player. And I would say Snap started off very secretive, based in LA, very LA-esque. I was at their summit, and it felt like you were at a Sony Pictures shindig. Snap received quite a bit of an onslaught after its IPO. One, the stock price fell, so that was a bit of a shock to the system. But they also, after spurning Facebook's acquisition offer, ended up getting basically their product jacked by Mark Zuckerberg, which is the Mark Zuckerberg playbook, which is fine. Imitation is the nicest form of flattery. And so with Facebook attacking Snap quite aggressively on their core product, it's as if Snap went into the war room and they drew a Venn diagram and they said, what is Facebook's weakness in video? And what is YouTube's weakness in video? Now, Snap views itself as a camera company. It's interesting that for all of the pushback and flack that Snap used to get as a very unsafe communication tool, the product that they launched in Discover nailed a lot of the problems that Facebook and YouTube had in video, which stem from brand safety. And the fact that Discover is an invitation-only platform, very LA-esque, actually meant that marketers were drawn to it. When I was at the Snapchat Summit, I was blown away by the quality and quantity of advertisers that were speaking Snapchat's praises. It's hard to get that at Facebook. I mean, you see people speaking highly of Facebook at Facebook events, but they probably have kidnapped the children of those people speaking. I'm just kidding, partly. And YouTube, same thing. YouTube is I love YouTube. YouTube is what built this entire mini empire of ours. But YouTube is generally viewed as a frenemy of rights holders and marketers, and especially traditional media companies. But Snap, despite all the challenges that it may face, and all the criticism early on that it was fair to receive, has actually built a very, very successful platform in Discover that content owners love, marketers are embracing, and I think is only going to get more and more traction because it's a very, very loyal user base that isn't giving it up. Now, recently I was in a day in New York in the morning at a Facebook summit, and then afterwards in the afternoon at a Snap summit. Now, I think most of the stuff they said may have been confidential. So I'm not going to get into the weeds right now, although I did do a video from my previous LA Snap Summit where I shared why I was so bullish. And again, disclaimer, I own a few shares. But the point I want to make is how different these two companies are. So Facebook in the morning, they're there. They invite all these other content creators, Vice, Refinery 29, Complex, to come on stage and talk about how wonderful their experience is, right? So they are basically projecting what they want to be seen as, which is this open, awesome platform that is friends of media companies, and I think they strive for that. I joke about Mark Zuckerberg eating children. I don't think he actually eats children, and I think as an entrepreneur, you have to tip your hat to him, although as a user, you're like, wow, not sure I would sleep well at night doing some of those tactics. But again, hate the game, not the player, as they say. I botched that one. But the point I want to get at is Facebook is actually still very much a closed black box where it's kind of like take it or leave it, this is the platform. Later on in the afternoon, Snap kind of the opposite. Nobody spoke amongst partners, only Snap employees. Very tightly choreographed, no Q&A, but Snap is an extremely partner-friendly platform. They listen to what their partners have to say, and you can tell that they realize that their success is a function of their partner's success. So it was a very big juxtaposition and paradox between what is and what each one strive to be positioned at. So I actually think that Discover nails the opportunity, and if I had to bet, maybe not 10 years, 10 years is a very long time, but if I had to bet where each one's going to be in a year, I would assume that Snap will be far further ahead, whereas Facebook and Watch will be a bit more sideways. And YouTube is going to just keep crushing it. Now, Twitter is interesting. I think Twitter has carved a nice little niche in live, in sports, companion to TV. I think that's really their sweet spot when if you're watching something on the big screen, you're going to be maybe talking about it. And that's a fantastic place to be because I don't think Twitter really wants to or needs to go head to head with YouTube or even Snap for that matter. And of course, the wild card, the new player is TikTok. And if I had to quote my colleague Kira, who manages our TikTok channel, it's if Vine and Spotify had a Gen Z baby, which I think is quite apropos. So I think TikTok is a really interesting wild card. And given the sheer passionate user base, it's not going to go anywhere. It will only grow. But it's basically such a more embryonic platform, which then combined with the Chinese ownership of ByteDance, their parent company, whose claim to fame is really just artificial intelligence recommendation and curation, I think they will have a lot of like soul searching to do very quickly regarding how much of it is an open platform where users can upload what they want, how much of it is going to be more like a Snap Discover platform where it's more curated, a safer brand experience. But the difference is like it's 2020 now, soon, and so depending on when this gets published, it might be 2020. But the point is that I think a lot more marketers and decision makers are comfortable with the unknown that is mobile and the internet. So all to say, where will we be in 2029? As we've alluded to in that recent video we published on the New World Order, the reality is that Netflix's success and YouTube's dominance in terms of market share has forced traditional media companies that are the owners of the intellectual property that audiences now are embracing more than ever direct to consumer through mobile and IPTV. I think that this new world order means that traditional media companies are fine to blow up their own business because they realize that if they don't, the Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft are probably going to eat away at their business in ways that they cannot imagine. So by virtue of blowing up their businesses and all of a sudden putting all their best fare online, then they're no longer going to be these traditional rights holders who control this IP that is super valuable. They're no longer going to be limited by the model of yesterday, which is local barriers and boundaries. All of a sudden, if you're online, which is ultimately outside of China or Iran or certain places, a boundaryless environment, you're going to need that content to put it across the world. So I think that historically, the US-based owners of this super premium IP, Marvel, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, American Idol. Even if these companies could be like Endemol and Fremantle based in Europe, ultimately they get the lion's share of their revenues from the US market. As those walls ironically are falling down, then this content will be going direct to consumer everywhere around the world. So the big opportunity is you have all these local players that are going to need more content than ever. Not all of them are going to be able to pay, let alone afford, this super IP that largely American rights holders will want to keep for themselves for their new direct-to-consumer platforms like HBO Max and Peacock, NBC Universal's Peacock. So there's this opportunity, and I've alluded to that pyramid, which is what I saw in 2006, the opportunity for WatchMojo. But as an entrepreneur, as an executive, as an operator, that's your opportunity now in the 2020s. You have the emergence of these new media, new tech platforms like not just YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snap, Twitter, TikTok, and a few others, but you also have the emergence of these new direct-to-consumer platforms like HBO Max, Peacock, Disney Plus, and many others. And if you go back to what made WatchMojo successful, that formula between balancing quantity, quality, frequency, and consistency, the arms dealers who can find a way to serve these guys and these guys as the borders and boundaries fall down will be the winners 10 years from now.